Morning and welcome all of you to the daily news analysis for 18th of April 2025 with me Jatin Verma. In today's news analysis, we are going to see these news articles. Vice President, the most vocal votary of parliamentary supremacy, takes a dig at the Supreme Court again. How can the Supreme Court use Article 142 and ask the President of India, the head of the nation, to abide to a timeline which is not given in the Constitution of India? Yes, he is talking about the veto power of the President of India, which was recently subjected to the judicial review of the Supreme Court. Why there is undue delay in the approval of the bills, in assenting to the bills passed by the assemblies, state legislative assemblies like Tamil Nadu, Kerala. So now the Vice President of India, speaking on behalf of the executive, is saying that there has to be abiding by to the separation of powers. Union executive should work in its domain, legislature should legislate, and judiciary should adjudicate but not legislate. We are going to discuss this in detail. There can be a question in the mains examination, since the Vice President of India has been speaking quite vocally about the encroachment of the legislative sphere by the judiciary in the recent past. So this is one of the topic today. Then Environment Ministry must roll back order on desulfurizing coal plants. So how the coal plants are being desulfurized, what is the device to be installed, what is the cost of the device, why that device should not be installed. National Institute of Advanced Sciences says that rather than desulfurization, we should focus on particulate matter emanating from the thermal power plants of India. That will be cost effective and that will be more effective in the sense of reducing the pollution emanating from these coal-based power plants. Now, these are the other news articles that we are going to discuss. Finally, on the Waqf Amendment Act, there is an agreement, temporary agreement between the judiciary and the executive, that court did not stay the Waqf Amendment Act altogether, but the government has assured that government is not going to do anything under the act. The denotification of the Waqf properties will not happen until the Supreme Court finally gives the final verdict on the Waqf Amendment Act. More on this at the relevant place. So these are the other news articles. Environment Ministry. Then why are women missing from the factory floors in India? This is a kind of editorial kind of a topic which caters to your GS Mains Paper 1 and GS Mains Paper 3. Employment of women, labor force participation. We are going to talk about the bell curve, the U-curve phenomena and the inverted U-curve phenomena when it comes to the participation of women. Why do women opt out after a certain stage in their career trajectory from the employment? This is what we are going to discuss. Before we begin, a quick information about the All India Open Mock Test 3, which is going to be held on 20th of April. Yes, the coming 20th of April. So you need to register fast. For online, the link is given in the description box of this video, from wherein you can enroll for this All India Mock Test to get the real hand experience of how the UPSC questions are framed, how they are asked, and how you have to answer them, elimination trick, etc. This is a good exercise to be done on a periodic basis. So we at PW Only IAS, we make sure that you have a one-stop solution to your UPSC preparation. Quickly enroll for this before the slots are filled up. The test is going to be held offline as well at Karol Bagh, Patna and various other offline centers of PW. Okay, the timings are going to be this. Information will be given on the web page where you will enroll for this All India Mock Test 3. To be held on 20th of April, guys. Now, coming to this thing, no Waqf denotification till the next Supreme Court hearing. So what was happening yesterday in the court? What had happened? The Supreme Court was about to put a stay on the entire Waqf Amendment Act 2025. But the Solicitor General Tushar Mehta, whose name we have been hearing quite often insofar as government litigation is going on in the Supreme Court. So he, on behalf of the Solicitor General, the representative of the Attorney General of India, assured the Supreme Court that government, please be assured Supreme Court, government is not going to implement the controversial aspects or provisions of the Waqf Amendment Act 2025, but please, we request you, don't stay don't put the stay on the entire Waqf Amendment Act 2025. So Supreme Court said that what is the guarantee that field officer level, state level Waqf councils will be reconstituted as per the Section 9 and 14, the amended sections 9 and 14 of the Waqf Amendment Act. To this, Tushar Mehta said that if any such thing happens, the Supreme Court can declare them to be void, declare them to be illegal. Okay, so this is how the parlays, the exchange of arguments happen between the judiciary and the government when it comes to these controversial matters. Now, what has happened is government has assured the Supreme Court that Waqf properties, including Waqfs by user, which were sought to be denotified if they are not able to provide any proof. Yesterday, we had dealt with the 5 major objections of the Supreme Court related to Waqf Amendment Act. Now, today, one of the most controversial provisions of the Waqf Amendment Act, that is Waqf by user, the government assured that whether declared by way of notification or through registration will neither be denotified nor suffer any change in the character until the next date of court hearing. Okay, so this kind of a assurance is required. This kind of an assurance is required by the court sometimes, so that the government does not do what is not legal, what is not determined to be legal as yet. Since the matter is in the Supreme Court, since the matter is sub judice, so it will be proper on the part of the government to not to implement, to not to enforce these controversial provisions. What was the second major controversy here? Second major controversial clause: no appointments would be made to Central Waqf Council or State Waqf Boards under the amended Section 9 and 14 of the Waqf Amendment Act. So the non-Muslim nominees, the non-Muslim appointees to the Waqf boards and Central Waqf Council will not be done until the final verdict of the Supreme Court, until the next date of hearing. Court gave 7 days to the government to come back, 7 days to the Attorney General, to Solicitor General to come back with the arguments from the government side as to why the Waqf Amendment Act is good. Okay, so the Attorney General said that, the Solicitor General, he said that the various studies were done at the local level. Waqf boards are encroaching upon the villages and villages of the people, okay, declaring them as the Waqf property. So that is why the government thought it right to bring about transparency in the functioning of Waqf boards and Waqf properties. That is why this act has been conceived well, and then only it was legislated upon. But the court was not amused, the court was not happy, and it said that come back to us after 7 days and give the assurance that these things will not be implemented at the ground level until and unless the final verdict is out. Okay, the next date of hearing at least is held on this matter of Waqf Amendment Act 2025. In the meanwhile, the Minister of Minority Affairs is replying to the Chief Ministers of Tamil Nadu, Chief Minister of Kerala, West Bengal and some other states. These Chief Ministers have of the opposition ruled states like Mamata Banerjee, M.K. Stalin, they have said that they are not going to implement Waqf Amendment Act. So our Honorable Minister of Minority Affairs is teaching constitution to them. He is saying that non-implementation of the Waqf Amendment Act will be untenable and unconstitutional. It will not be acceptable. Why? Let's study the entries. Okay, what are the constitutional entries? West Bengal CM has declared that the act would not be implemented. Tamil Nadu Chief Minister and other Karnataka Chief Minister, they urged the centre to withdraw the act before it was passed. Now they say that we are not going to implement it. Okay, so various opposition ruled states are now saying that they are not going to implement Waqf Amendment Act. Can this happen? Let's study theoretically. So these are the constitutional entries. I am trying my level best to help you cover every aspect of the Waqf Amendment Act or whatever is going on in a bits and pieces manner. Every day we add some new element to our analysis so that you are holistically covering the aspects around Waqf Amendment Act. In the yesterday's news analysis, if you haven't yet watched it already, we had covered the 5 major objections of the Supreme Court highlighted by the judiciary against the Waqf Amendment Act. What are the 5 major controversies? Yesterday we had discussed that. Now, land and law and order, these are the subjects in the state list. Since Waqf Amendment Act 2025 talks about or denotification of the Waqf properties. Land is a state subject. So how can the states not implement this thing? Okay. Can the states not implement the Waqf Amendment Act provision related to properties on the basis of the fact that land is a subject in the state list? Okay. Then law and order. Again, law and order is a state subject. So they can say that they are not going to implement it. Okay. So law and order around the implementation, etc., that can be one of the grounds. But charitable and religious institutions fall under the concurrent list entry number 28. It is on the basis of this entry that Union was able to legislate upon Waqf properties. So this is what you need to understand. Non-implementation of any law enacted under the concurrent list entry would amount to violation of the constitution on the part of the state governments. Now, what is the article that deals with the power of the center to punish the state governments? Okay, can the central government punish the state governments in case of non-implementation of the the law passed by the state government? Yes, Article 356, the governor's report. Okay, it can be assumed that it has the non-implementation of the law passed by the union government at the state level would tantamount to breakdown of the constitutional machinery. That means the state governments are working in a negative manner, in a manner prejudicial to the constitution, to the implementation of constitution. So that is why the state governments have no way out except to implement it, because the law has been enacted under the entry charitable trusts and religious institutions, entry number 28. So these entries also can be a point of question in the preliminary exam UPSC. Okay, so you should be thorough with it. Today we have added another element of it. Now coming to the other news article, Supreme Court cannot fire nuclear missiles at democratic forces. What is the nuclear missile? So Vice President of India is not happy with the way the Supreme Court has been dictating terms to the constitutional authorities like the governor and the President of India. Governors of states have been sitting over the bills for years, as long as, for the time period as long as 1 to 3 years. When they are not acting in the constitutional spirit, the Vice President of India, a very strong votary of the separation of powers between the Union Parliament, the legislature, the executive and the judiciary, is saying that judiciary cannot teach constitution to the legislative bodies, the constitutional bodies. What has happened is power of the veto power of the governor has been clarified by putting the time limit of 3 months, 1 month to 3 months, insofar as giving assent to the bills is concerned, giving approval to the bills passed by the state legislature is concerned. But Vice President of India says that how can the judiciary dictate the terms to the President of India? He says that I would have never thought that this day would come in my life, that I would have to see this kind of an assertion or encroachment of the legislative domain by the judiciary. Okay, so Jagdeep Dhankar sir is quite vocal about the encroachment of the legislative sphere by judiciary. Sometimes he talks about Keshwananda Bharati judgment, basic structure of constitution. Yesterday he spoke about why and how can the judiciary put a time limit on the President of India to give assent to the bills passed by the state legislative assemblies under Article 201. Okay, governor gives the assent to the president to the bills passed by the state legislative assembly under Article 200. Governor can reserve such bills for the consideration of the President of India under Article 201. Now, the other day, few days back, Supreme Court had put a strict time limit, not more than 3 months, in case the governor wants to reserve the bill for the consideration of the president, in case he wants to withhold his signatures on the bill passed by the state legislative assembly. Now, Jagdeep Dhankar sir is saying that Supreme Court time and again cites Article 142 while doing such kind of legislative acts, judicial overreach. What is Article 142? Article 142 says that power of the Supreme Court to do complete justice. by just not saying that the governor R.N. Ravi of Tamil Nadu was wrong. Supreme Court could have stopped here, but that would not have done complete justice, right? Complete justice to the matter of delay in the signatures of the governor to the bills passed by the state legislative assemblies. So that is why, what did the Supreme Court do? Supreme Court said that if it had stopped at just saying that governor's action was, let's say this is scenario 1. Okay, scenario 1 is Supreme Court just stops at saying that governor's delay in passage of in rather signing of the bill was wrong. Okay, this would have been the scenario, was wrong. Supreme Court could have stopped here, but this would not have done complete justice. That is why the Constitution of India gives the power to the Supreme Court to do complete justice. Scenario 2, usage of Article 142, by citing Article 142, by invoking Article 142, which talks about the power of the Supreme Court to do complete justice. Supreme Court went ahead and put a time limit on the governors for the future. Okay, so isn't it a good solution when governors are time and again breaching the or doing the inordinate delay, undue delay, when the Constitution says that as soon as possible they have to pass the bills? Okay, as soon as possible they have to give signatures to the bill under Article 200. They should not be delaying it in an undue manner, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. Okay, so Article 200 says that as soon as possible the signatures should be given by the governor, the assent by the governor should be given in a time bound manner. Now the Vice President of India is not happy with the usage of scenario 2, wherein the Supreme Court had put a time limit, a strict time limit on the President of India and Governor of India in determining the matter of presidential signatures and the signatures of the governor, right? Now, asserting the doctrine of separation of powers, Jagdeep Dhankar sir, the Vice President, is saying that the principle of separation of powers, he underlined that when the government is elected by the people, the government is accountable to the people, to the parliament, and to the people in the elections. There is a principle of accountability in operation. In parliament, you can ask questions, but if this executive governance is by the judiciary, how do you ask questions from the judges? He says that the governance is the job of the executive, the MPs and MLAs who are made ministers. They are accountable to the people through periodic elections. But if the same governance is carried out by the judges, by these type of activities and judgments, are the judges going to be accountable to the people? The answer is no. We all know this, hai na? But the problem is, when government is abdicating its responsibility, when governors, the head of the government in the state, okay, when the president is exercising undue delay, because they are acting on the aid and advice of Council of Ministers. So if there is an undue delay in the functioning of these bodies, Article 163, Article 174, so when the abdication means not doing your duty properly, when the governments are not doing their duties properly, judiciary has to exercise a check. Okay, so there is what is happening between the judiciary and the Vice President Jagdeep Dhankar is the fight for striking a balance between doctrine of separation of powers versus doctrine of checks and balances. Judiciary says that if one organ, that is government, if it is not working properly, then judiciary will have to check the functioning and strike a balance, checks and balances. Okay, there should be no vacuum in the governance. Governance should be done even if by the executive, very good. But if executive is not performing its duties, then judiciary will have to step in the shoes, right? But what is the executive saying? What is Vice President saying? Vice President is saying that separation of powers has to be there, irrespective of the fact that even if the government is not doing the governance. So there will be a vacuum of exercise of power. There will be an anarchy then. Okay, so this is the fight going on. This is the kind of debate going on between two organs of the state, judiciary and the executive. This is how we can do the rational analysis of it. And after understanding it, we need to be thorough with these details of Article 142, Doctrine of Separation of Powers. Please answer which is the article that talks about Doctrine of Separation of Power. Which are the articles given in the Constitution of India? Then what are the articles given in the Constitution of India which talk about Doctrine of Checks and Balances? Okay, this is the holistic analysis that we can do of this topic. Even though, my dear students, even though this is a very small topic, Vice President is making a statement on the conduct of the judiciary and the transparency in the judiciary insofar as Yashwant Verma 15 crores cash case is concerned. But these simple statements, if on a rational plane, if on a sober plane, they are analyzed, they can be translated into UPSC mains questions and prelims questions. So our job here as students is to extract the relevant parts of this debate or discussion or controversy and study the factual part of it and analyze the analytical part of it. Okay, opinionated part of it. So let's proceed further. Okay, he also took a dig at the the Yashwant Verma case, at the recent handling of the CJI, the Supreme Court of the Justice Yashwant Verma inquiry. Initially, judiciary was not coming forth insofar as allegations of cash and corruption by Yashwant Verma is concerned. Later on, under media pressure, under the pressure of the public, judiciary started investigation. Right, but that investigation started with a mere transfer of the judge of the Delhi High Court to Allahabad High Court. That is why the Vice President is saying that judges are not accountable, yet they are legislating, yet they are executing, yet they are governing the country. So that is the point here. Now coming to Environment Ministry, the news is that since India is going to continue its nuclear power plants for a long haul, for a long period of time, there is a device called as flue gas desulfurization. Okay, FGD device. This device is installed somewhere here at the top of the thermal power plant, so that whatever sulfur content is coming out of the thermal power plant with the burning of the coal, that can be stopped at the source itself. Because if this sulfur is allowed to proliferate, it will spread to the atmosphere, leading to inhalation of the sulfur by the local population. Right. So that is why Environment Ministry had in 2015 made it mandatory for all the thermal power plants of India, 537 thermal plants that are operational, to install this FGD device that will help in controlling the sulfur dioxide content emanating from or emitted by thermal power plants. Okay, now there is a study by National Institute of Advanced Sciences. Okay, this study says that NIAS study cites the study by IIT Delhi, which says that sulfur content lasts in the air for not such a long period of time. Okay, sulfur content is sulfur dioxide, SO2 is temporary. So there is no need to install such a device which is called FGU. Okay, FGD for which costs 1.2 crore rupees. Thereby it increases the cost of operation of the thermal power plant. That increases the cost of generation of electricity also. Plus this FGD device itself consumes a lot of power. It consumes a lot of power also. So that is why it should not be installed. So what is it saying? Flue gas desulfurization. Please note it down for GS Mains Paper 3, Science and Technology and Climate Change. Okay, we are going to operate our thermal power plants for quite a long time now. Now the problem, this NIAS cited that we need not use this FGD device, flue gas desulfurization. Okay, why should we not use it? Because the SO2 content in the coal, Indian coal, is very less. SO2 content in Indian coal is very less. Okay, point number one, in favor of not using, we should not be using these devices. Okay, second point is the sulfur content is very temporary in the air. This is the second point. that they cite the IIT Delhi study which says that sulfur dioxide content emitted by the thermal power plants is going to be there for a very small period of time. Third, they say that installation of this FGD device itself consumes a lot of electricity generated by the thermal power plant, consumes a lot of electricity. Thereby, usage of this device will lead to the emission of more carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide remains in atmosphere for a long period of time. Its life is longer, okay, longer life than the temporary life of sulfur dioxide. So why should we install a device which leads to curbing the pollution from a temporary source, curbing the pollution of a temporary nature, that is the pollution of sulfur dioxide, and instead it leads to pollution of a longer nature, that is pollution emanating from carbon dioxide. Okay, so this is a technical article. Let's read them one by one. National Institute of Advanced Studies is located in Bengaluru. It has found that the installation of this device is leading to a lot of problem. What are the problems here? India has an installed cold capacity of 2,18,000 megawatt. For every 1 megawatt, the cost of installation of FGD device is 1.2 crore rupees. Okay, so imagine the cost for 2,18,000 megawatt of installed thermal power capacity. Right, so this is going to be creating a problem. So that is why installing FGD should be stopped by, which has been made mandatory, should be stopped by Ministry of Environment and Forest and Climate Change. Now, the rationale behind suggesting non-mandatory FGD, flue gas desulfurization. Okay, rationale underlying the NIAS analysis is that 92% of the coal used in Indian plants has a low sulfur content. So for a coal which has low sulfur content, why to install such an expensive device called FGD? Number one. Number two, height of the thermal power plants. Norms mandated by Central Pollution Control Board require that the stack height, the height of the, you can say the what we call as chimney in layman's language, okay, the height of the thermal power plant should be extended to 220 meters. Okay, if the height is extended to 220 meters, the air pollution, the sulfur dioxide content will go upwards only. It will not affect the local pollution levels, the particulate matter, etc., that we talk about. Okay, since the height is already very high, 220 meters, the height suggested by Central Pollution Control Board is 220 meters. So it should not be, the FGD device installation should not be made mandatory for those thermal power plants which are already complying with the minimum height requirement. There are some thermal power plants which are of the lower height. So for them, FGD can be made compulsory, but for the thermal power plants which are already at the mandatory height limit, minimum mandatory height limit, they should be exempted from installation of the costly device FGD. Clear? Then, coupled with the Indian climate conditions, ensured that sulfur dioxide emission does not, or it did not threaten the local air quality. Now, no acid rains. So one of the primary constituent or requirement for acid rain to occur is the sulfur dioxide content in the air. Since the sulfur dioxide content in the air is less, no major acid rain incidents have occurred in the recent past. So that also feeds to the argument, that also leads to the argument that installation of FGD device, flue gas desulfurization device, is not necessary, more so when such kind of acid rains led by sulfur dioxide are not happening in India. Okay, so we have a proof that if the sulfur dioxide content would be leading to some pollution, some harm, then more acid rains would have been occurring, but they are not occurring. So that is why another reason to not install this. Second, installing FGD in all plants would increase power consumption as well as fresh water consumption in the plants, leading to an additional 69 million tons of carbon dioxide released by the thermal power plants. So to curb the emitting of sulfur dioxide, we are leading to a situation, we are causing a situation where carbon dioxide content is released more in nature. in the climate, in the atmosphere of the local area. Carbon dioxide release is permanent in nature. The ozone layer gets depleted, etc. Sulfur dioxide is more temporary in nature. So for curbing the pollution of temporary pollutant, we are increasing the content of the more permanent, more long lasting pollutant, carbon dioxide. So that is the third argument, that we should not make it mandatory. Okay, the study argues that for SO2 emissions, citing an intergovernmental panel on climate change. IPCC is a panel which is associated with Conference of Parties, Paris Conference, etc. Okay, so IPCC assessment said that having masked global warming by 0.5 degrees Celsius. Now, SO2 emissions have led to masking of carbon emissions by, or masking the global warming by 0.5 degrees Celsius. Because of the additional sulfur dioxide content in the air, the global warming has occurred lesser by 0.5 degrees Celsius. Okay, from 2010 to 2019 relative to 1850 to 1900. So, in a way, sulfur dioxide is good for preventing the global warming. Okay, so these 4-5 points have been cited. Then therefore adding more long-lived CO2 emissions while removing the short-lived SO2 emissions by installing FGDs indiscriminately in all thermal power, all the 527 thermal power plants in India, despite the low sulfur content of Indian coal, because Indian coal by nature, by its very nature, has lesser sulfur content, so lesser emission of sulfur dioxide. Then why install the expensive, the costly SO2 preventing devices, FGD, flue gas desulfurization devices? Okay, so the study recommends that instead, what is the solution? Solution proposed by study is that, solution is here, that to address the local level pollution, we should address the particulate matter pollution that results from these thermal power plants. What is the problem? Why the particulate matter is more from the thermal power plants? Because of the higher ash content in the Indian coal. Instead of higher sulfur dioxide content, Indian coal leads to higher ash content once burnt. So that ash content leads to proliferation of emitting of more sulfur, more fly ash content in the air, leading to inhalation, breathing problems, etc. Okay, so this, to prevent this ash content phenomena, particulate matter pollution, installing electrostatic precipitators will be the solution. These electrostatic precipitators are cheaper than the FGD devices. So there are two things. Okay, FGD device leads to lesser pollution by sulfur content, by SO2, sulfur dioxide, versus these precipitators which lead to lesser pollution by particulate matter. Okay, particulate matter 2.5, etc. We talk about them because of the high ash content in the Indian coal. Indian coal inherently leads to more ash content once burnt in coal, but lesser SO2. SO2 is already less in the Indian coal. So why install these devices which cost 1.2 crore rupees per MW? This device costs 25 lakh rupees per MW and is more effective when it comes to pollution by thermal power plants. Right, so which one should we go for? We should go for this one, considering the Indian scenario. Okay, so lesser sulfur content is there in the Indian coal. That is why we do not require the installation of flue gas desulfurization devices in all the thermal power plants. We have studied the reasons that the height is more. I hope you remember all these details now for your science and tech exam related topic here. Okay, now coming to another analytical topic here. Why are Indian women missing from the factory floors? This is a picture of an image. This is an image of a woman standing on the factory floor operating a machine. Women are found in lesser and lesser numbers in the Indian factories. The other day I was watching a video by Ola CEO his name is, I'm forgetting. He says that we have a complete women factory, Ola scooters manufacturing factory that they have. Okay, so Nari. Now the article says that one of the drivers of Viksit Bharat will be manufacturing, and one of the pillars of Viksit Bharat, as seen in the budget 2025-2026, is Nari women. However, women are missing from the factory floors. They are not being hired by the factory owners because of lack of skills, poor skills, and other things. Okay, skill training, etc., higher education they do not complete. Those reasons are there. We are going to arrive at those decisions, those problems after going through the problem here. The share of women in India's formal manufacturing sector fell from 20.9% in 2015-16 to 18.9% in 2020-22-23. Okay, so I have incorporated these type of flow charts or diagrams in this. Women's labor force participation. What does this diagram say? It is higher at this level. Poor countries' women work in farm. At the agriculture, in the agriculture sector, the proportion of working women is more because of feminization of agriculture. Men leave for cities, women are left behind at the villages, so they tend to farm. Participation of women in the agriculture leading to feminization of agriculture. Okay, so this can be a question in the UPSC mains exam also. Then the participation goes down. Urbanization and social barriers against women, safety of women. Okay, we talk about Vishaka guidelines by the Supreme Court ensuring the safety of women at workplace. Those things are leading to lesser participation because working places are not safe for women. Then there are social barriers, marital barriers. Okay, women would be conceiving babies after getting married. So since her husband is earning, so women is told, the wife is told not to work. Okay, then women education level raise. Since the as the women education level rises, some husbands are supportive. They ask the women to pursue higher education. Since women pursue higher education, wives they pursue higher education after 30s, after 35 years, after having conceived babies or having had a family, they start working again. So this leads to a U curve kind of a phenomena. Here women are working more in agriculture, here the employment of women comes down, here it starts to rise again. Okay, so in their 20s they are working, after they get married they stop working in 30s, in their 40s again they start working. So this leads to a U curve phenomena. Clear? So this is how the participation of women follows the trend in the developing countries, U-shaped relationship as we call it. Women education level rises as the economic development in the country happens. But what is our article saying here? Our article says that what is even more striking is that of all the women who are working in the manufacturing sector, Tamil Nadu alone is employing 41%. Why this skewed nature? In states like Bihar, women are not found working, Uttar Pradesh, etc. But in Tamil Nadu, what is the striking factor? Writer later on talks about the scheme for safety of women at workplace. We are going to discuss that also briefly. More women in the informal manufacturing. In the informal manufacturing, women form 43% of the workforce. See guys, we talk about Article 24, Article 23, Article, these articles talk about equal pay for equal work, directive principles. But hiring the women in the informal manufacturing enables the factory owners, enable the manufacturers, the owners to pay them lesser wages because their record is not kept. So that is why in the informal manufacturing sector, women are hired more in numbers. But in the formal sector like Infosys, Wipro, TCS, etc., because of norms like Maternity Benefit Act, wherein a woman would be paid 6 months salary when she is pregnant. If her salary is 50,000 rupees, while even not working or working from home, she will be legally entitled to 50,000 rupees salary from the Infosys. That is why the private sector entrepreneurs, the companies, the corporates, they do not hire women right after their marriage or 1 to 2 years after their marriage when they are going to do family planning, the conceiving of baby, etc. So that is why the formal sector workforce is less. But by the way, we are talking about informal sector manufacturing here. Okay, so therefore it is not the case that women are not working, but they are not getting the better jobs. So what is the way to get better jobs? What is the problem with getting informal sector work? Low paying nature of jobs, insecure nature of jobs. They might be shunted out, they might be fired anytime. There is no work, please go back. Okay, so manufacturing, when it contributes almost 20% of India's GDP, 17%, 16.66, 17.5%, it is poised to be a key growth driver for India. But the participation of women in this manufacturing sector, which contributes 20% of India's GDP, is less than 20%. Proportionality in the hiring of women and manufacturing sector contribution to GDP is not there. GDP is contributing more. Manufacturing is contributing more to GDP, but women are not being hired in this manufacturing sector. Number one could be automation, but then why are men being hired? Maybe the technological skills that are required in the arena of automation, machine learning, robotics, women are not quite adept or quite skilled at those skills which require operation of these sophisticated machineries, the sophisticated equipment. Okay. Remedial steps to increase female participation in the job market. Skill training is required given the high degree of informality, informal nature of work, informal nature of hiring, and heterogeneity in the manufacturing workforce. Heterogeneity means some of the women are hired in, let's say, carpet making, tobacco industry, which require lower level of skills. Okay, food processing, etc., packaging of food, basically. So the best way to boost participation is skill training for women, upskilling to improve participation and productivity. So we need to upskill the women who are already working so that they are not at the mercy of employers, or they also do not face the risk of being fired or dehired because of enhancement in the technology, because of advancement in the technology, upgradation of the technology. So upskilling is the need of the hour. Periodic labor force survey that is conducted from time to time by ministries, by the ministry. Which ministry conducts periodic labor force survey? Please answer. Periodic labor force survey is conducted by which ministry? You have to answer. About 6% of the women in sector have either formal vocational training or training on the job. Hence, upskilling women is imperative to improve both participation and productivity. Second, it is essential that women complete higher education, which will improve their chances of being employed in manufacturing. Okay, higher education. So the point is, we need to have special skill centers, skill training centers for women. We need to have mandatory spend by the corporates, by the companies like Airtel, Infosys, by companies in the banking sector to skill women for hiring. Okay, like we have corporate social responsibility, we should have corporate social responsibility specifically dedicated towards the training of the workforce. Within that pool, from within that pool, a dedicated amount of percentage or funds for training of women should be dedicated in order to have the feminization of workforce, in order to reflect the society, the social composition in the workforce also. Remedial steps, again, nearly 47% of men in manufacturing have completed secondary education or higher compared to just 30%. So since women are not pursuing higher education due to various reasons, that becomes another reason for these women not being hired for manufacturing. Third, there is an immediate need for greater sectoral diversification. Why should women be working only in tobacco manufacturing, only in carpet making, the soft, the easier skills? Why shouldn't they be hired in automobile sector? So that is the point here. Okay, why should they be hired only for the soft nature of jobs, soft natured jobs? They should also be hired in the hardcore skills. For that, we require the training, skill training, etc. Okay, setting up of more polytechnic colleges, that is the need of the hour. Now, Tamil Nadu initiated 𝐂𝐍𝐃𝐄𝐃 scheme, under which it built working women hostels. So to make the work environment safe for women, we need to learn from the Tamil Nadu's example of 𝐂𝐍𝐃𝐄𝐃 scheme, in which women's dedicated hostels have been built. Such specific interventions are needed in each state to address their unique challenges. Okay, so this was all in today's news analysis. This is the mains practice question. The Periodic Labor Force Survey 2023-2024 highlights a steady rise in the female workforce participation. Yet, significant gender disparities remain. Examine the key barriers to women's employment in India and suggest the policy measures to enhance. So I told you that dedicated corporate social responsibility fund for training of women should be there. Okay, even though we have corporate social responsibility, but out of the same CSR funding, what we need to do is we need to allocate a certain percentage of the funds for training of women. Okay, for the training in general, skill training centers, etc., should be set up by Airtel, should be set up by Liberty Shoes, Bata Shoes, etc., etc. That will lead to the participation of the women in the longer term, medium to long term, 5 years to 10 years time period we need to take. Okay, then the topics that we dealt with in today's news analysis are the bell curve, etc., you need to study. Okay, many a times the question has been asked on this: what is the bell curve for participation of women, which represents the career trajectory of the women? Okay, then we talked about Waqf Amendment Act, what happened in the Supreme Court yesterday, then Vice President's remark on the usurpation of the legislative domain by the judiciary. Why judiciary? How can judiciary put a time limit on president and governor? Article 142, power of the Supreme Court to do complete justice. These are the topics that we've dealt with. Yesterday we saw a thorough analysis in the yesterday's news analysis. What are the four to five major objections of judiciary against Waqf Amendment Act? If you are new to this news analysis, let me tell you, please cover the news analysis of last 1 or 2 days at least to have a sense of continuity. Secondly, the PDF of this news analysis is shared on the Telegram channel, the link of which is given in the description box of this video stream, guys. Okay, see you again the same time tomorrow around 8:15 a.m. in the morning. Thank you. Bye-bye. Have a great day.